From KPFK in Los Angeles, California, Valley Free Radio in Florence, Massachusetts, WNUC in Detroit, and BikeTalk.org worldwide, this is Bike Talk.
Bike Talk.
Welcome to Bike Talk. I'm Taylor Nichols.
And I'm Nick Richard.
Hey, Nick.
Hey, Taylor. So you're in Barcelona.
I am, yeah.
And also you're in Barcelona, the movie.
I was. That was a long time ago, but yeah.
There was just an article in The Guardian saying it's going to be a cult classic.
Yeah, it's nice to be in a cult classic. I have a couple of those in my repertoire. It was, 30 years ago that we did the movie Barcelona, and I'm back here now visiting my wife's family. And, one of the great things about being in Spain, Nick, is the riding is fantastic. I'm a little bit north of the city, actually, and I'm in what you might call bike heaven. It's near Girona, and Girona is where a lot of the professional bike racers live. And I'm going to hopefully go there this week and ride with some people there. But the roads in Spain are great. They're well paved and they're very little traveled. And there's lots of bike riders all over on them. So it's really pleasant.
Yeah, I saw an Instagram reel from you. What were you playing? Easy Feeling?
I don't remember the song, but you know why I was playing that? Because I rode up this road to a little restaurant called Puig la Bulla, and I got a gin and tonic.
Yeah.
And so I finished my ride with a gin and tonic at this little teeny restaurant next to this church in the middle of this natural forest. It was just such a civilized way to ride the bike and to end the bike ride.
Normally, if you're back home, it would be a beer.
Well, just normally back home, I would just come home and, go on with my day. But, it's late August and this is kind of vacation time. And, we're here on vacation. So it's a nice way to be on vacation, to go out and ride your bike. Vacation is something that we're supposed to do to take care of ourselves, to kind of reboot ourselves. And I find that biking is such a big part of that for me. And you can't always ride when you're on vacation because it depends where you go.
I'm actually on vacation right now. I'm in a Block Island, which is off of Rhode Island. We didn't bring our bikes because we didn't know what to expect. There's really just a road with cars and everything, but it's slow. I would have liked to have the bike.
Yeah, but sometimes when you're on those seaside places, there's just a lot of traffic on those roads. And you don't have the option, especially to ride with your children or with people that aren't really confident bikers.
Right.
Which is why I think we need separated infrastructure for bikes.
There's this concept, all ages and abilities.
8 to 80.
People are coming to understand, like our researchers in last episode said about the Dutch, is that if the speeds are going to be potentially deadly, over 25 miles per hour, you need separated infrastructure for people walking and biking.
Right. And we've covered a lot of those bike lanes, Hopkins bike lanes in Berkeley, the bike lanes that have tailwinds and have, been opened or at least in the process of being opened.
Another one just got a gap fixed that was part of corruption in the Adams administration in New York City.
Right. That's Ashland Avenue. Right. Of course. And they call that Crashland. And we'll talk about that in a second. But there's also Toronto in Canada. And we've been talking about that on the show, about Doug Ford wanting to rip out bike lanes.
The Canadian Court of Appeal just ruled that they can take out the protected lanes in Toronto, right?
Right. Bloor, Yonge, university bike lanes. And we've had Michael Longfeld on before to talk about those bike lanes. So we have Michael now to fill us in on what this appeals court ruling means. We talk all about headwinds and tailwinds and, what it takes to get a bike lane put in a city. And in Toronto, Doug Ford's administration has been fighting bike lanes that are already in the ground. And we have Michael Longfeld. He's the executive director of Cycle Toronto. Michael, the appeals court just ruled, it sounds like, in favor of Doug Ford's administration to take the bike lanes out. Can you give us a quick update?
Yeah, happy to be back, even though it's under less happy circumstances. Right. I think last time I was chatting with y'all was probably about a year ago when Cycle Toronto had received news from the courts that we'd actually won in our charter challenge. Going back to what that was and putting this into context, and saying it out loud, it feels ridiculous, but here we go. In Toronto, decisions around bike lanes are, usually left to cities like in other cities, but our premier seems to have a bit of an issue with the city. There's a whole backstory there. He's the brother of Rob Ford, infamously coined the term war on cars. As the premier, he introduced legislation at a provincial level, basically at the state level from a US perspective, that would basically force Toronto to remove 19 kilometers of its bike lanes. And these bike lanes that they targeted, Bloor Street, Yonge Street, and University Avenue, really form the spine of Toronto's cycling network. Like if you were to remove them, it basically guts the effectiveness of the rest of the downtown cycling network. The reasons they were saying this was, it's addressing traffic congestion and it's hurting businesses. And, we as the province need to step in. We tried fighting this, before the legislation was passed. We had over 20,000 people sign our petition. Again, nearly 20,000 people wrote into the government and said, we don't want this to happen. We had policy experts from engineers, from doctors, planners, all saying this is a really terrible idea. Regardless of how you feel about bike lanes, the province stepping in and doing this is in and of itself a really bad idea, that bike lane decisions should be left to cities. Anyway, they passed it. And then we basically took them to court, represented by lawyers from Pellier Rowland and EcoJustice. And I think you had one of those lawyers on before, Andrew Lewis.
We did, yes.
Very lucky to be represented by Andrew and his team and the EcoJustice folks. But the case was basically that ripping out these bike lanes was in violation of the Canadian Charter Rights and Freedoms. And, that maybe sounds like a bit of a stretch. How is bike lanes a rights issue? But essentially, the way the argument went was because removing these bike lanes was arbitrary, because, the consensus of transportation planners and even the province's own experts was that bike lanes do not cause traffic congestion, and therefore removing them would not help Toronto's traffic issues, that was arbitrary. And because the known impacts of removing the bike lanes would result in people being killed and seriously injured, it was reckless. And so therefore it met this two-step process to be considered a charter violation. And that was argued in courts. And we won back in July last year. And this didn't come down to, Cycle Toronto's experts saying bike lanes good for traffic, province's experts saying bike lanes bad for traffic. All the experts, even the province's own internal documents that they had to, reveal as part of this process, confirmed what we were saying. This wasn't one side versus the other. It was both sides saying the same thing. So a judge agreed with us, which was fantastic. And so, we had a kind of a stay of execution for these bike lanes for the past 2 years, which has been fantastic. Unfortunately, the province appealed, which, obviously is within their purview. That argument was heard back in January of 2026. And then on Friday, August 15th, they finally came down with their decision, and they basically sided with the province and reversed the original decision.
What did they give as their reasoning for the change on the appeal?
We're still processing it and trying to understand what this means or not. But high level, what it seemed to be arguing was that governments don't need to follow any advice of any experts when passing legislation. And we've been joking around the office that, it's basically just vibes-based governing. And so they started with that, but then they kind of continued in their decision, and they then started slagging our experts and implying that, actually, common sense sort of says that if you add a lane of traffic, it will make things better. And maybe these bike lanes aren't so good. So it kind of undermined the first part of their, again, I'm not a lawyer. This is just my take. But to me, it kind of softens the first part of their argument. If this is just governments don't need this, then why do we? But anyways, that's the decision for now. Like I said, we're still grappling with it. In the immediate aftermath, the premier and the minister did do a short victory lap where they talked about this being, a win for common sense. Anytime any political leader uses the word common sense, it sets off big red flags for me. And, again, from our perspective too, a common sense solution would be designing transportation policy to ensure that everyone gets home safely and there are no senseless deaths on our roads. And there's this very bad faith underlying argument here that, this is about bikes versus cars, or this is about bike lanes causing traffic congestion. And, especially when you're dealing with dense downtown urban streets, thoroughfare and traffic flow isn't determined by lane capacity alone. A lot of it is about intersections and other bottlenecks on smaller streets. So this idea that 19 kilometers of bike lanes was contributing to traffic on 5,000 kilometers of Toronto roads, again, it's just not based in reality.
Right. Well, thank you. Yeah, because cars cost traffic. Not bikes. This sounds so much like what happened in Washington, D.C. with America's bike lane. Is it over? Is there an appeal to an appeal? Or as you said earlier, is it a political issue now?
Yeah, I mean, certainly in the short term, it's back to being a political debate, which on some level it's always been. We would have rather this sort of been something that could have been worked out politically, an agreement between, our mayor, Olivia Chow, and the premier, Doug Ford. We felt we had to take this step because the province was basically undermining the will of our city council and our mayor by moving forward with this. In the immediate aftermath, we've heard some, let's say, encouraging statements from our mayor that she's looking to find compromises with the province. Certainly there are some sections of the target bike lanes where it's not just travel lanes and bike lanes, that they have like parking protected bike lanes. So there are stretches where you could choose to reconfigure the parking into 2 travel lanes. We're not opposed to that on principle. That's just another choice. It does maybe undermine the decisions that were made during the consultations where maybe business owners wanted that parking or wanted that accessible loading zone. And now, the decision would be to make it a travel lane. But high level, that's not a huge flag for us. The challenge is in some sections of the roads that just wouldn't be feasible without completely removing the protected nature of the bike lanes. That's a no-go for us. In the short term, we'll see how those conversations go with the mayor's office. We also have a municipal election coming up in Toronto, and I think what our next mayor and city council looks like in November will have a lot of implications for how willing the new council and mayor are to collaborate with the premier on this or not, and how much they might want to rip out the bike lanes themselves. That's a whole other piece. In terms of the legal case, we're still reading through the decision, but I can confidently say at this point that Cycle Toronto is committed to fighting this to the full extent of the law. And if, in our opinion, that involves, trying to bring this to the Supreme Court of Canada, then that might be a step that we take. But it's a bit premature to say that definitively yet.
One of the really frustrating things about it is the decision is being taken away from the local leaders and being done at, like you said, at a province level. That's the really hard thing because, Tip O'Neill said all politics is local. And we should be able to decide if our streets are safe for our children and our parents and our vulnerable road users. And that's the real shame of this whole thing.
One of the challenges we have in Ontario with our cities, even a major city like Toronto, which isn't as big as New York, but is one of the largest cities in North America, is Ontarian cities have almost no constitutional status in and of themselves. They only exist by virtue of provinces. They have all their power through the provinces. So provinces have a lot of veto power over what cities do. So, certainly from Toronto, often we look at what we're hearing, Madami's doing at New York City in terms of really moving things forward really quickly in a way that just wouldn't be possible in Toronto because the province can kind of bottleneck a lot of things that way too. So I think one of the reasons why this issue has resonated in Toronto and Ontario beyond, the cycling community is because it does speak to, this kind of rights issue, and it does speak to local democracy. And I think a lot of people, even if they're not in favor of these bike lanes per se, have a fairly deep distrust of the province that's trying to meddle in these things that way as well. This coalition's a bit bigger and broader than it might be in another bike lane related issue. And I think that's encouraging in and of itself as we find the premiers trying to turn this into kind of a polarized culture war. In some ways, it's kind of backfiring. It's creating a bigger coalition of folks on our side willing to kind of push back on it.
Great. Well, we certainly want biking and safe streets to be a big tent movement. It's just really heartbreaking when you have something that's in and working and then they want to take it out. And we know what happens when you take out the middle of a bike lane. It makes the whole bike lane really less usable because it's only as strong as its weakest link. Michael Longfeld, Cycle Toronto, thank you for the work and fighting, and we will keep on this.
Definitely, yeah. This isn't over yet. Again, it's not the news we wanted to hear, and it's definitely disappointing, but we're definitely not done. We've still got a lot of fight left in this.
Nick, it's not all bad news like it is in Toronto. There is some good news going on. And in New York, Streetsblog NYC is reporting that Ashland Avenue in Brooklyn has a gap in it of like a 1-block gap. They have renamed Ashland Crashland because that's where most of the crashes happen on that section of road. Well, now Mamdani is going to fix that and close that gap.
And here's Streetsblog NYC's Emily Lipstein in pre-Mamdani times.
Welcome to the most dangerous block of Brooklyn's Ashland Place, aka Crashland. On every other block along the mile-long span, the city installed a 2-way protected bike lane in 2023. But one block between Lafayette Avenue and Hanson Place remains as treacherous as ever. It's an unnecessarily confusing intersection for cyclists, pedestrians, and drivers alike. It puts southbound cyclists into the direct line of oncoming northbound car and bike traffic. And if you're lucky enough to survive the intersection, you then get to follow the sharrows along the line of parked cars, double-parked trucks, and Uber passenger vans. But why is it like this? It's all thanks to meddling by Two Trees Management, whose subsidiary manages the building's parking garage. At the time, officials in the Adams administration told us that Ingrid Lewis-Martin, one of the mayor's former top aides who regularly opposed safe street efforts before she was indicted, capitulated to Two Trees' demands and told the DOT to stop the project on this specific block. So while riders may be able to breathe a little bit easier on the rest of the street, Crashland remains a nightmare thanks to City Hall's meddling. Don't believe me? Let's look at the numbers. According to city stats, a total of 959 crashes have happened on the stretch of Ashland south of the BQE since 2011. A quarter of these happened on just one block. Want to guess which one? It's Crashland. Delaying safety improvements on New York City's streets has proven to be deadly. Hopefully nobody else needs to die for the city to see this.
Emily Lipstein gave us the background on Ashland Avenue in Brooklyn, and Kevin Duggan of Streetsblog NYC is going to give us the foreground, right? Kevin, what's going on now about this missing section of protected bike lane?
Mayor Mamdani came into office kind of vowing to finish a lot of street safety projects that his predecessor, Eric Adams, had either stopped or watered down in some way. This one on Ashland Place is just kind of the latest example of this. So there was just one block that was missing from this protected bike lane, and it was finished 3 years ago, the original bike lane. But then after some kind of outside interference by some local businesses, then Mayor Eric Adams put it one block short, leaving this kind of gap in the bike network that was pretty difficult and confusing for people to navigate over the last 3 years.
And that one block was the site of a lot of the crashes along this corridor.
Yeah, it became pretty dangerous as a result. The bike lane is a 2-way bike lane that DOT designed on most of Ashland. And then at this one block, it just stops and goes from a 1-way car street into a 2-way car street. And so if you want to continue south, you now have to like cross over oncoming car traffic to keep going, which is a very confusing and dangerous move for anybody to have to do. And it's only because DOT couldn't finish its design of bringing the bike lane all the way down that last block. DOT even admitted it when it came back under Mamdani that the design was not intuitive, that their own compromise design they had to set up was not really working for people.
What's the news on why it wasn't finished?
One of my colleagues, Jesse Coburn, uncovered that local developer, Two Trees and Brooklyn Academy of Music had been pushing back against this bike lane. The missing block is right outside the buildings of these two groups. Ingrid Lewis-Martin, Eric Adams's former first deputy, you could say, basically intervened and made DOT stop on that last block. She's since been indicted for allegedly taking bribes for a different bike lane on McGuinness Boulevard in Brooklyn. Right. That trial is still ongoing, but Mamdani has since finished that project. And yeah, Ashland is like, it's just one block that's being redesigned, but it's really part of this larger story of corruption and outside interference in street safety projects.
We always talk about if the bridge goes halfway across the river, no one's going to drive on it. And that's certainly the same thing with bike lanes and protected bike lanes.
Again, it's just one block, but it connects like so many different bike lanes in Brooklyn to each other, and it connects to the East River bridges. Like you were mentioning, you need a full bridge. Like it connects to Manhattan, the Brooklyn and the Williamsburg Bridge via bike lane. So just taking out that one block really kind of left a very meaningful gap in the Brooklyn bike network.
Kevin, is there a timeline for when it will be finished?
They're working on it over the next couple of weeks. So, usually these things, they try to get it done before it gets too cold to do street paintings around like October, November. So
right.
My guess would be in the next coming weeks, they'll have it done.
Great.
So yeah, hopefully that will be ready to ride soon.
Kevin Duggan, Streetsblog NYC, thank you very much.
Thanks so much for having me.
We've been covering New York and Mayor Adams and taking a bribe to not put in some bike lanes. Well, we just got some disappointing news that SAFE put out. Streets Are for Everyone. Damian, welcome back to Bike Talk. Can you tell us a little bit about what's going on Forest Lawn and where it is and why it's important?
Yeah, Forest Lawn Drive is part of the greater Griffith Park area. And Griffith Park is the large central park in Los Angeles. It's kind of like Golden Gate Park in San Francisco or Central Park in New York, but a lot bigger. Forest Lawn Drive is on the outskirts of it. It's a 4-lane road used heavily by drivers, but also by cyclists and pedestrians. And it's badly broken up and in need of repair. It was slated for repaving 3 years ago. Councilmember Nithya Raman decided that it was time for an upgrade. And they looked at the number of people who've been seriously injured or killed on this road since 2013 and decided, let's see how we can slow this down and give better bicycle infrastructure for both the cyclists and pedestrians, and realize there is no sidewalk along this road. It is a shoulder, really.
Yeah. That it is one of the main ways to get into Griffith Park. And it's also one of the main connectors from the San Fernando Valley to what is basically downtown LA. Griffith Park is where you were hit.
Griffith Park is ground zero for me. When I was hit, lost my leg and nearly my life, and the reason why I'm so passionate about road safety. So this very much hits close to home. There was 3 years of community engagement and redesign and studying, making sure that traffic patterns were not severely impacted while reducing excessive speeding and giving more protection to cyclists and pedestrians. Days away from the repaving and the restriping starting, Forest Lawn, Mount Sinai leading this effort, did a lot of lobbying of the mayor, and she personally stepped in and stopped the project. And the letter from the mayor basically says, let's just pause this and look at other options. And we'll get this solved so everyone's happy. And we're going to do it in a couple of weeks. It's been 2 months since that letter was issued. We don't have any data that anything's moved forward. I've had discussions with LADOT, and I've reached out to the mayor's office trying to get clarification on what has moved forward. From my understanding, nothing's moved forward. And just a few days ago, a driver was driving at high rates of speed on this road and lost control and ended up dying in flames in their vehicle, to the point where they don't even know if it was a male or female. The body was so badly burned and the vehicle license plate was so badly burned that they don't even know who the vehicle belonged to.
Wow.
The studies that LADOT did found that on average, the changes to this road would slow down traffic, and it would cause a roughly 12-second delay in drivers. They would take 12 seconds longer to travel this 1 mile. That's how bad the delay would be. And to kill this project because of a 12-second delay, and that's average. During rush hour, it would actually be less than 10 seconds on average worth of delay. And that is what killed this.
Well, it's unconscionable, and I'm angry about it because that's a road that I ride my bike on all the time. And I'm very aware that cars are passing me going 50, sometimes 60 miles an hour. And the only thing separating me from those cars is a white strip of paint.
Yeah, we did a speed survey, a recent speed survey, and we've clocked cars going as fast as 75 miles per hour on this road, inches away from cyclists and pedestrians using the road. It's only a matter of time before more serious injuries and fatalities happen.
Well, you had mentioned Nithya Raman, and you were at a press conference for her earlier today, and she is running against Karen Bass for mayor of Los Angeles. Where does she stand on this?
Nithya Raman is upset that this project that she worked on for 3 years was paused, is not moving forward. A person's died. And she's definitely taking advantage, shall we say, of this as a talking point for her campaign.
Well, she should, because safe streets affect us all. Damian, Kevitt, thanks a lot for coming on very last minute and explaining what's been going on in Los Angeles.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on again. It's good to talk to you.
Vision Zero can work. I mean, everybody remembers what Vision Zero is, that it's this idea that we design our streets to a place where no one is killed anymore. Mm-hmm. Zero road deaths. And cities like Los Angeles have failed miserably at it. But Somerville, Massachusetts has succeeded wonderfully. For 3 years, Nick, they've had no road deaths.
I wonder how they did it.
Yeah, by implementing road design that makes cars slow down. In 2025, over 36,000 Americans were killed on their roads. That's almost 100 a day. That's 12% higher than the country's best year ever, which was 2014. We record more deaths per 100,000 people than almost any other Western country. But it is possible if we design our roads for safety rather than for speed.
And we got this information from the Christian Science Monitor. We know how to do it if we choose to.
Exactly. If we would just choose to. So that's the good news. Now let's go to Stacy's news.
I'm Stacy with this week's news. We lead with the tragic late-breaking news out of Northeast Tennessee. On Wednesday morning, a driver struck 11 members of the Milligan University cycling team during a group training ride on Highway 19 in Carter County. 2 sophomore student athletes, Halen Engdahl and Braden Rogers, were killed in the crash. 7 other team members remain hospitalized. State troopers confirmed the investigation is in its early stages and no charges have been filed on the driver. The tragedy comes just months after the small university cycling team won a national title. In professional racing news, 19-year-old British cyclist Finlay Tarling was killed after a driver steered an off-course vehicle, a van, into his path during Stage 8 of the Volta a Portugal. Tarling was riding behind the main group on a route governed by a rolling roadblock when the driver entered the live course. In response, the Cyclists Union, the CPA, expressed fury over ongoing race safety failures and called for an immediate overhaul of helmet safety standards, noting that current testing fails to protect riders at modern racing speed. Over in Canada, Ontario's highest court has delivered a major blow to Toronto's cycling network. The Court of Appeal overturned a lower court ruling clearing Premier Doug Ford's government to proceed with tearing out protected bike lanes on key downtown corridors, including Bloor, Yonge, and University Avenue. The court ruled that street design decisions belong to elected legislatures, not the judiciary. Advocacy group Cycle Toronto is currently weighing an appeal to the Supreme Court of Canada. And finally, across the Atlantic, London is celebrating a major milestone. Transport for London announced that the city's protected cycleway network has grown 5-fold over the last decade, expanding from just 90 kilometers in 2016 to 450 kilometers today, with 2 more major routes set to wrap up later this year.
Lo Sontag was on the show, and she has a ride where she lives in New Jersey called the Friendly 8. And they meet every Saturday morning, and they do an easy loop around Halcyon Park, a gentle pace. It starts at 8 in the morning, and they're done at 9 in the morning. And so here's Lo talking to a few people on her ride.
Kimberly, I've been trying to get her to come out to my Friendly 8 ride for many Saturdays. It's a ride I have every Saturday around Halcyon Park in New Jersey. And she finally came out.
Yay! I finally came out Saturday. It was a beautiful ride.
I let her borrow my bike. It's a green 3-speed English.
It was so fun to ride. I hadn't been on a bike in like 10 years.
That's my whole goal, is getting people who haven't been on a bike to be on a bike.
You live in a perfect neighborhood to ride your bike around. There's not a lot of traffic. There's no people driving crazy all over the place.
All the traffic calming techniques and strategies and tools essentially are in the neighborhood. It was made for people to walk around. The speed limit is actually 15 miles per hour. During Halloween, as you know, lots of people come to our neighborhood because the houses are very close together and it's safe for even like 3-year-olds to ride their bike on the street.
I love coming over to help you hand out candy because I love seeing all the kids getting their candy bags filled. You were talking about traffic calming techniques. Your neighborhood also has a lot of one-way streets.
Yeah, it's one-way streets. And it's just very narrow. And we have a 90-year-old woman and she has a little walker and she walks around the neighborhood. And cars actually know to stay away. Like, oh, we don't want to come down the street because this is where people hang out. This is where kids ride their bikes. And you say that you don't feel comfortable riding your bicycle on the street to like even get to the train. Why is that?
I would love to bicycle to work. My work is only 3 miles away. There's no bicycle infrastructure whatsoever. And it's like all industrial parks and people do ride their bikes, but it would scare me. There's no bike lanes at all in East Orange. Any space that could be used for a bike lane is taken up by cars parking. So bikes are oftentimes pushed right into traffic. I would feel unsafe trying to get around by bicycle in East Orange.
The thing they talk about in a lot of these studies are like how you can get a more variety of people on bicycling is if you have a protected bike lane, which is infrastructure. And I think a lot of times in bicycling, we're very much into vehicular cycling. If you have cycling lessons, then you can ride your bike. I mean, and I don't think you should have to have this whole fearless, be able to like ride your bike like it's a car in order for you to ride. I mean, if we want people to ride bicycles, we have to demand infrastructure, not demand that people be fearless and aggressive in order to ride a bike. People don't want to do that when they have options like Lyft and walking and calling someone to pick them up.
For me, as a 50-year-old woman, I worry about my bones. I don't want to fight with cars to try to get around town or try to go to work or anything like that. I would much rather be in a protected bike lane. Like I see why places like Jersey City are so attractive to people who don't have cars because of the bicycle infrastructure that exists there.
We need bicycle infrastructure. I'm not saying that, the Greenway's not great. But it seems like it's a lot of challenge. I ride my bike to work, but I'm really pushing it. And because I really just believe in cycling. But the thing is, I don't feel like people should have to risk their life. And sometimes I do feel like I'm risking my life when I use my bicycle. I have the Friendly 8 in Halcyon Park because I want people to see like how it should be. It's an idealized version of what it should be. And so you feel comfortable. What's one thing that can make you get on a bike and ride a bike regularly to go to your work or go to your grocery store in your neighborhood?
Not being forced into traffic, which would be a protected bike lane.
So not just paint then?
No, not just paint.
Have to be like a substantial bike lane.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Kimberly, for talking to us. And I'm hoping to, work with some people and get us some bike lanes so that you can ride your bike to work and to the grocery store. And we can have a culture that is not obsessed with auto asphyxiation.
Thank you so much for having me.
This is Lo Sontag with Dr. Charles Sontag. You come to our Friendly 8 ride all the time.
Yes,
and
I do.
Are you enjoying it?
Yeah, I like riding my bicycle, mainly because I'm not doing it for exercise or for sport or competition.
Do you use your bike to go to work, or do you use it like to go to different places?
In the past, I did. When I lived in Milwaukee, there was some good bookstores and some game stores and hobby stores that were 2-3 miles away, and I would ride my bicycle there. Also, school and work at Milwaukee were just outside of walking distance.
You're in Halcyon Park. And this neighborhood, while it's quite small, is very bikeable. Is that one of the reasons that you went? Is it because of the train, because of the biking? Why did you decide to pick this neighborhood to live in? Not just be part of the Friendly Ape Ride, but, this is where you actually live.
When I was looking at neighborhoods, the realtor said, people know one another here. And then there's a diversity of transportation styles. So I can walk to the grocery store, I can walk to the train station, I can ride to the good cafe in the town. So there is a good coffee shop, and that one's just out of walking reach. We either have to drive or take the bicycle. It's just far enough away. This area allows for different modalities, and the neighborhood itself lends itself to being a launch pad for bicycle activities. In fact, I see a lot of children playing on bicycles. I'm surprised we don't see more adults using this as a base. It really is a useful base for bicycling here in Bloomfield.
Yes. So I noticed another thing that you often have an older bike. You have a Pendleton. What kind of bike?
Pedersen. So a Pedersen was an early safety bike. If you know much about the history of bicycles, the reason for what was called the penny farthing, which was one big wheel in front usually, with a few exceptions, and one small wheel in the back, was they didn't have a gearing system. The problem is you had these people high up on the front wheel, and if they had an accident, if the bicycle got stopped, you would do something called a header, and this killed people. The safety bikes had the two wheels the same size. The one that you see today, which is basically a diamond, the triangle supports your body, and then the triangle that supports the rear wheel is a diamond. And it's actually not a bad model, but those early ones were made out of steel. They were heavy, and Pedersen said, what if I do a whole lot of little triangles? And that's where his Pedersen bicycle came from. The other utility of this old style bicycle was it's meant for a posture that's upright. One of the things that you see with these safety bicycles, the diamond frame, is that they've gradually become set up for riding fast. And by the 1970s, when you got a 10-speed bike, and I got a 10-speed bike in 1980, you would have these handlebars that were curled over, and you were expected to hunch over and go as fast as possible on a 10-speed. And I did that a lot. But over time, my back has started to hurt. And so the upright posture of this older style bicycle is incredibly comfort. And the fact of a 3-speed commuter, because most people don't really use more than 3 speeds anyways, is incredibly useful. So these nice internal hub bicycles that you see with a lot of old bicycles, they're good for the average commuter. They get you where you want to go. And because you have this internal gearing in this internal hub, it protects the gearing so it's low maintenance.
Thank you so much for that wonderful history of the safety bike and giving us a reason why, cycling can be something that you do every day. If we have the infrastructure and if we have the right tools to do so and the right institution to support that kind of traveling around the city. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Dr. Sontag?
I like bikes, and I wish I had more opportunity to incorporate them into my life.
Lo says, dress cute if you want to, or don't. There's no pressure. Just show up and enjoy the ride. I think that's great advice.
Sounds like my kind of ride.
A couple of weeks ago, Nick, I moderated a panel of bike shop owners in Los Angeles at the Bike Oven. And a name that came up a lot of the people that own and run bike shops in LA was Jim C., our own Jim Cadenhead. Mm-hmm. And Jim is now talking with Kelley, who's the owner of Allez Allez, a bike store in Los Angeles.
Okay. This is Jim here in Los Angeles at Allez Allez with Kelley, probably the most famous fixie food that there ever was. What are you excited about in the bicycle industry right now, Kelley?
That's a great question. I actually am not excited about anything in the bike industry right now, but I am excited for people to make it safer to ride bikes across this country, this city, these neighborhoods, and that's what matters most to me currently.
You a bike lane proponent, active bike path proponent? What do you think works best?
I'm actually neither of those. I prefer protected car lanes. I feel if we give the cars a protected lane that they can't get out of, it'll keep them much safer from us.
Awesome. Now that you're riding with kids, what do you think is the best way to get kids into riding?
The best way to get kids into riding is to just be open-minded, understand that not all kids move at the same speed as you do. Most kids want to sit around in a parking lot and learn how to wheelie, so you need to make sure they learn how to wheelie.
Kids riding to school, kids after school partying on bikes. Where do you see bikes playing the biggest part?
If kids are living close to school, the bike can introduce freedom for them. It can get them to school and get them home from school and get them to their friend's house. Kids wheeling and partying after school, I think, is great. You know, a lot of people are definitely haters of that movement, but I'm all for it. I would love to sit in traffic while they go through red lights all day. I also want to talk about bike buses. We need more bike buses across the United States and the world.
Bike buses are awesome. Bike buses are really, really cool. You just opened a new space here in Los Angeles. Any plans of branching out to other areas of the country?
When I retire.
You still digging LA? You think LA has a lot left for bikes?
Los Angeles is the greatest place in the world, in my opinion. It gave me my children. It gave me my wife. I will be here as long as I possibly can. The issue with Los Angeles, we got to all learn to take care of each other, support independent business, support small business, and make sure everybody riding bikes on these streets is safe.
Thanks so much for those words.
I love what they say about kids. If kids want to do wheelies and ride around, I think that's great. The main thing is that kids are out on bikes, enjoying the outdoors, not on their phone, not on the internet. Partly I say that because I could never do a wheelie. Can you do a wheelie?
I could pop it up in the air and then I have to come back down.
Yeah, me too. But these kids ride blocks and blocks on their rear tire. And they're doing it on pedal bikes, not on e-motos. So I like that also.
I, too, am in favor of this practice.
Well, thanks, Jim C. And thanks, Kyle, for running Allez Allez. It's really a wonderful bike store in Los Angeles.
This is Liza Birch, who's a poet, I guess, and a bike advocate in Rhode Island, who's going to make a poem out of anti-bike infrastructure hate mail.
That's right, Nick. So, yeah, my name's Liza. I'm an advocate here in Rhode Island, and I am looking for your most unhinged emails that folks have sent you to oppose your projects. What I want to do with them is create a poetry zine or a website. It depends what the volume of input we get. But basically, there's a type of poetry called erasure or blackout poems, where you take an original piece of text and then delete certain words or phrases to reshape the text into something else. And I first kind of came across this type of poetry during the pandemic. There is a wonderful poet named Kate Bear who would receive really horrifically misogynistic Instagram messages from men that she would then completely reshape into really positive and like uplifting messages. So if you have really, really upsetting and unhinged emails sitting there in your inbox from whether it's a project you're working on right now or 10 years ago, and you want something cathartic and uplifting to do with them, please send them my way and I will reshape them into something more beautiful and hopeful.
And there is a lot of hate coming at people who are trying to make safe streets.
Yeah, that's right. I've spent a little bit of time working for the US DOT, and my God, the hatred that they're throwing our way is really, really stunning right now. So from the Trump administration all the way down to your local neighborhood association, I'm sure there's plenty of hate text to work with that we can reshape to, plan for the future that we want to see. And I want to do that. This is a purely fun, creative project. This has nothing to do with paid work. This is just a therapeutic way to deal with my hate emails that I hope others would maybe find some solace in.
Well, I'm sorry you're receiving these emails, but I think it will be a way of healing and dealing with it, to see that other people are having that experience and then to turn it into a Erasure poem.
Yeah, Erasure, or I like blackout poem, because you kind of just take a Sharpie to the word to the words and create something new out of it. It's a kind of a visual thing to describe on the radio, but it'll make sense once you see it.
Where are we going to see it?
Great question. You're going to have me back on your radio show when I have that figured out, but likely online somewhere. I've had bike poetry zines published with Microcosm Publishing. Shout out to them about 10 years ago. So maybe we'll reach back out.
Oh, yeah.
Very TBD.
Ellie Blue is a frequent guest.
Awesome. Yeah. Shout out to Ellie.
And so where do we send our hate emails?
Yeah. To my email, that would be Liza, Liza, at pvdstreets.org.
Sorry it's happening, but good idea.
Thank you. I'm just really hoping this helps get the word out so that more folks can send me their worst emails. It's totally understandable if you were at a job where you had a lot of residents opposing a project and left that to the inboxes of have moved on from that work. But if you do have access to old emails or current ones, send them my way.
The email, one more time?
Yeah, one more time. My name is Liza Birch. I'm with the Providence Streets Coalition, and my email is Liza, Liza with a Z, at pvdstreets.org.
Great. Thanks, Liza. We'll keep in touch.
Thank you.
Good show.
We want to thank Michael Longfeld, Lo Sontag, Jim Cadenhead, and Kyle Kelley, Emily Lipstein of Streetsblog NYC, Kevin Duggan, and all of our regulars, of course, Julie Richard, Kevin Burton, Amy Ziering, Lindsay Sturman, Stacy Randecker, Josh Hagland, and Eric Sawyer.
Let's close it out with a quote from the episode.
The best way to get kids into riding is to just be open-minded, understand that not all kids move at the same speed as you do. Most kids want to sit around in a parking lot and learn how to wheelie, so you need to make sure they learn how to wheelie.
Great.
Thanks, Taylor. Enjoy Barcelona.
Will do. Ride safe.
This episode of Bike Talk is sponsored by the law offices of Pocrast and De Los Reyes, with offices in Los Angeles and Bakersfield and serving all of Southern California.
Bike Talk is a project of CRSP and the Los Angeles Eco-Village Institute. And that was Bike Talk. If you have a story, a tip, or a topic, head over to biketalk.org and send us a message. Talk again next week.
Push on a pedal, get your heart started. Push on a pedal, push it down and up again. Push on a pedal, get your heart started. Push on a pedal, push it down and up again. Get on your bike, sit on the seat, push your feet on the pedals, and ride it all around, ride it all around. Get on your bike, sit on the seat, push your feet on the pedals, and ride it all around, ride it all around. Yourself a bike. yourself a bike. Get yourself a bike. Oh, 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 get yourself a bike.